All right, next we'll look at confidence intervals for one mean. So switching out of our proportions, looking into means. Remember that whenever we're dealing with means or averages, we need to use a t-distribution. Remember that those t-distributions are very similar to the normal model, but they're used for means or for averages. You need to make sure that you have degrees of freedom in order to work with those t-distributions. So if you have just one sample, it's really easy to find degrees of freedom. You just take your sample size, subtract 1. Your conditions for this confidence interval for one mean are the same as your conditions for sampling distributions for means. So you would look for a random sample size less than 10% of the population, and making sure that your distribution is nearly normal. Okay, I wrote this little template off to the side here, so I would pause your video real quick to jot this down. But my interpretation should say I'm blank % confident the true average of whatever is between blank, and don't forget your units here. Since we're dealing with averages, we're no longer dealing with percentages, we should have units on the average. Formulas for mean and standard deviation aren't really needed there, so you can go ahead and cross that off. You really just need this formula here. I'm going to change this into an X bar. So we take our sample mean, add and subtract our t-score, times that standard deviation, which is the standard deviation divided by square root of n. Okay, so my example says, Consumer Reports tested 14 brands of vanilla yogurt, found these numbers of calories per serving. We want to create and interpret a 95% confidence interval for the average calorie content of vanilla yogurt. So we're going to start with checking our conditions. Okay, first is that they need to be random. It's not saying that they're random, but I do think that 14 brands represent all brands. Next, I'm looking for that less than 10%. I do think that 14 brands are less than 10% of all brands. The third one, I'm making sure that this thing is nearly normal. Since they give us data here, we are going to have to do this in our calculator. So I already have all this data typed into my stat. Go ahead and pause your video for a minute so you can plug all of this data into your L1. Okay, once you have your data in L1, to check this third condition, if it's normal, we're going to make a histogram. So I'm going to go to my stat plot, histogram for L1, 09. It's looking pretty normal there for me. So I'm going to sketch this scatter plot. Sketch this histogram. And I do think that this is nearly normal. Okay, once I'm good there, I can start finding everything I need for this interval. I need to find my mean and standard deviation, so I'm going to go to Stat, Calculate, 1var stats. I am pulling data from L1. Frequency list, you can leave blank, that's for probabilities, we don't have any. And it's going to give me everything I need. So my X bar is 157.86. Standard deviation is SX on your calculator, so that's 44.75. N is 14. And I'm also going to find my t-score here. So I know that I need my little model. Looking for 95% confidence, which means I'm looking for the middle 95%. So there's 2.5% on each tail. Since I'm looking for a t-score, I'm going to be using inverse norm, or inverse t in my calculator. So I'm going to second vars, inverse t. The area is 0.025. Degrees of freedom, one less than the sample, so 13. This gives me a t-score of 2.16. I've dropped the negative there because I know I'm going to be plugging it into my interval. There's a plus or minus, so that negative doesn't matter. Okay, plugging into my interval, I'm taking my mean, adding and subtracting my t-score, times the standard deviation over square root of n. Again, I'm going to find that margin of error first. Whoops, that's a 14. So I get 25.83. I'll add and subtract it. Okay, let's see if I can squeeze the interpretation in here. I'm going to say I'm 95% confident that the true average calorie for yogurt is between 132.03 and 183.69 calories. I can check my work again using my calculator. Okay, so we're going to go to our stat tests. I always look for one sample t interval, and you'll hopefully notice as you're scrolling, there is no one sample t interval. So instead, we're just going to go to t interval here. We can pick data or stats. I have data. It's listed in L1, and I want 95% confidence, I believe. Yep. And go to calculate. And it looks like it matches my interval.